Welcome, everyone. Today we're going to discuss a pretty sensitive topic that, well, has been making waves in the tech community. It's the death of Suchir Balaji, a former OpenAI researcher, and the allegations he made against the company. Before we really get started, suicide is a serious matter, and if you or anyone you know needs help, the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline is available 24/7. You can reach them at 988.
Okay.
So Suchir Balaji, he was this bright 26-year-old programmer, graduated from UC or Berkeley. He seemed to have a promising career ahead of him at OpenAI, the company behind ChatGPT.
Yeah.
But Balaji's story, well, it took a dark turn. He went from being an AI innovator to a critic of OpenAI. Joining me today is an expert who can, they can help us sort through this really complicated mix of AI, ethics, and legal battles.
Happy to be here.
Okay, so let's get started by looking at what we know. And we're pulling this from some reliable sources like CNBC, The Times of India, and several others.
Yeah.
Okay, so Balaji was found dead, tragically, in a San Francisco apartment late November. And the official cause of death, as it's been reported, is suicide. So what are your initial thoughts, considering there's no evidence of foul play, but like the timing of his death, it was so soon after he went public with his concerns about OpenAI.
Yeah, it's a tragedy. It really is. And while, like you said, there's no evidence of foul play, the timing is, it's definitely suspicious.
Right.
It makes you wonder. And it highlights the pressure that whistleblowers face, especially in tech. Imagine being in his position, a young, talented researcher who believes in the potential of AI, only to find something troubling about the very technology he helped develop. That kind of conflict, that internal struggle, it can be so isolating.
Absolutely. And it makes you think about it makes his decision to speak out even more, significant.
Yeah.
So let's discuss the core of what he was saying, his allegations. Based on his blog post and his interview with the New York Times, what was Balaji accusing OpenAI of doing?
His main argument, copyright infringement. He claimed that OpenAI, in building these powerful AI models like ChatGPT, well, he said they used copyrighted material, like articles, books, code without permission or attribution. Basically, he was saying OpenAI was building their success on the work of content creators without fairly compensating them.
So that brings up fair use. Right? It's a legal defense that comes up a lot in copyright cases. Can you kind of explain how Balaji challenged how fair use applied to what OpenAI was doing?
Sure. So fair use lets you use a limited amount of copyrighted material. You don't need permission if it's for certain things, like criticism, commentary, research. But Balaji argued that what OpenAI was doing, well, it went way beyond that. He said they weren't just referencing or commenting on content, they were using it to train their AI, to generate similar stuff, and that could devalue the work of the original creators.
He even said that AI models like ChatGPT could put the livelihoods of these creators at risk. He was painting this picture where AI would just replace human creativity.
Yeah, he was worried about AI disrupting industries, displacing human creativity. I mean, think about it. What if an AI could be trained on all of Stephen King's books and then write something just like him? What happens to the value of King's work? That's the kind of thing Balaji was warning us about.
And it's not just him, right? We've seen that OpenAI is facing these lawsuits from big names like the New York Times and authors like John Grisham. They're all saying copyright infringement. So how do these lawsuits fit in with what Balaji was trying to expose?
They show exactly what Balaji was worried about. They show that the rules about AI and copyright, they're still being figured out. And these cases, they could set a major precedent for how copyright law works in the age of AI. That's what makes them so important.
It seems like Balaji started out believing in OpenAI, in their mission, that AI could be a force for good. But then he became disillusioned. What do you think caused that shift? Was it just, finding out about the copyright stuff, or was there something more going on?
It's hard to say for sure, but based on what he wrote in his interviews, it seems like he was struggling with the ethics of AI. He saw how powerful it was, and he started to wonder if we were developing it too fast, faster than we could really understand the consequences. His story, it reflects this growing feeling that, well, AI has this amazing potential, but it also has real risks, and we need to think about those risks carefully.
Before we get too deep into the legal stuff and the consequences of Balaji's allegations, we should acknowledge that the investigation into his death is still ongoing. And while the official cause is suicide, his last public statements and his actions, they raise a lot of questions.
Yeah, they do. The timing and the nature of what he was saying, they add another layer to an already sensitive case. We have to approach this with empathy and respect for everyone involved. But at the same time, we need a thorough investigation to really understand what led up to his death.
His last interview with the New York Times, it was published after he died, and it feels particularly meaningful now. Can you tell us a little bit about what he talked about and what it might tell us about how he was feeling in those last few weeks?
He was really open in that interview about his concerns, about OpenAI, about the ethical implications of AI in general. It seemed like he was really struggling with the responsibility of speaking out, even though he knew it could hurt his career, his reputation.
It takes a lot of courage to be a whistleblower, especially in an industry as powerful as tech. What do you think about the New York Times publishing his interview after he died?
It's a tough question, ethically. On one hand, you have to respect the privacy of someone who isn't here anymore, who can't give consent. But on the other hand, Balaji's story, it raises these important questions about corporate responsibility, about the potential dangers of AI that isn't controlled. I'm sure the New York Times thought very carefully about all of that before they published it.
This whole situation is so complex. Was Balaji's whistleblowing a last attempt to fix what he saw as wrong? Or was it a cry for help? Because of all the pressure. Did his worries about AI have something to do with his death? What do you think?
We can't know for sure what was going on in Balaji's mind in his final days, but his story, it reminds us of the pressure whistleblowers face and how much we need to support and protect people who speak truth to power.
And it makes us think about the ethical and legal challenges that come with how fast AI is advancing. What do you think Balaji's legacy will be? Will his story change how we talk about AI ethics and copyright?
Only time will tell. But he definitely brought those issues to the forefront. His death is a tragic loss, but his bravery in speaking out could inspire others to demand more transparency, more accountability from the tech industry.
His story reminds us that progress in technology shouldn't come at the cost of ethics and well-being. We're going to continue following this case as it develops.
Balaji's allegations, they raise this important question about OpenAI and their data, like how they collect it, how they use it to train their AI. He said they were scraping websites, basically copying huge amounts of information without getting permission. And that brings up these concerns about copyright and, whether it's ethical.
Right. It's complicated. OpenAI says they mostly use public data and that what they're doing is fair use. But how do you decide what's actually fair when you're dealing with these giant data sets? An AI is so powerful it can basically recreate copyrighted stuff.
That's where the lawsuits are important. Those lawsuits are forcing OpenAI to prove that what they're doing is legal. And the outcome of those cases, well, it could have a huge impact. It could set a precedent for how all AI companies can use data to train their models.
It's like we're at this turning point with AI. On one hand, it's this incredible technology. It could revolutionize so many industries. But on the other hand, there are all these ethical and legal gray areas that we're still trying to figure out.
Exactly. AI is developing so fast, faster than we can really understand the implications. And Balaji's case just highlights how important it is to figure out how AI fits in with our laws, like copyright law.
We talked about how Balaji worked on ChatGPT. For like a year and a half, that means he was directly involved in gathering and organizing the data they used to train the AI.
Right, and if you look at his social media posts, it seems like his time at OpenAI made him question their claims about fair use. He was skeptical of their argument that no single data source really impacts the output of a language model like ChatGPT.
He even said, none of the 4 factors seem to weigh in favor of ChatGPT being a fair use of its training data. What are those 4 factors? And why did Balaji think they didn't apply here?
Okay, so the 4 factors they look at in copyright law in the U.S. to decide if something is fair use are the purpose of the use, like what it's for, the nature of the copyrighted work itself, the amount and substantiality of the portion taken, and then the effect of the use on the potential market for the work, basically how it impacts the value of the original. Balaji argued that OpenAI's use of copyrighted material wasn't transformative, meaning they weren't using it to create something new, and he said it could hurt the market for the original work.
So even though he helped build ChatGPT, he ended up criticizing how they were collecting data. He saw it as potentially harmful to the whole internet ecosystem. That conflict, that must have been incredibly tough for him.
Oh, absolutely. Imagine that ethical dilemma. You go from being passionate about something to being a critic, especially about a technology you helped develop. It suggests, well, a real moral struggle. He must have weighed the good of AI against the potential downsides.
In that last interview with the New York Times, it seems like Balaji knew his claims would be controversial. He knew he was taking a risk speaking out against a company as powerful as OpenAI. What do you think about his decision to go public, knowing the consequences he might face?
It shows how strongly he felt about it. He had to speak out, even though it could have hurt his career, his personal life. Whistleblowers, they often face retaliation. They get isolated, their careers get damaged. And yet, Balaji chose to speak. It says a lot about how seriously he took his concerns.
It makes you wonder about the impact of that pressure on him mentally. Did the weight of his accusations, the fear of what OpenAI might do, the lawsuits, did all that contribute to his death?
It's impossible to know, for sure, what led to his suicide. But it shows us the burden whistleblowers carry and how much we need better support systems, better legal protections for people who come forward with this kind of information.
This also brings up the whole culture of secrecy in tech. What role does that play in keeping people quiet when they see unethical or illegal things happening?
Tech is all about innovation, about speed. And sometimes that comes at the cost of ethics. It creates an environment where, well, if you disagree, you get silenced or ignored. We need more transparency in tech, more accountability to make sure ethical concerns are addressed, not just pushed aside.
Balaji's death and the lawsuits against OpenAI, they make us face these hard questions. What kind of future are we creating with AI? How do we balance its potential with ethics, with legal safeguards?
We can't just assume that technology is always good. We have to be involved in shaping how it develops, how it gets used, in ways that benefit everyone, not just a few people.
What lessons can we learn from all this? How do we create a tech industry where people feel safe speaking up, where whistleblowers are protected, where AI is developed ethically?
Balaji's case shows us that we need to do a few things. Stronger legal protections for whistleblowers, more transparency from tech companies, and a better, more open discussion about the ethics of AI. We need to create a culture in tech where ethics are just as important as innovation and profit.
Balaji's story is a tragedy, but it's also a wake-up call. It tells us to think critically about where AI is going and to fight for a future where technology helps humanity, not the other way around.
He was brave to speak out, even though he knew it could be bad for him, and we should be inspired by that, to demand more accountability, more ethical behavior from the companies that are building the future with AI. We have to make sure AI is used for good, not for harm, for everyone's sake, for the future.
Balaji talked about AI being misused, about its impact on creators, and it makes you wonder about the future of art, literature, intellectual property, what happens when machines can be creative like humans. How do we protect artists and writers when AI can make content that looks just like theirs?
Those are tough questions. We don't have easy answers. We have to rethink how we see authorship, copyright, the whole idea of human creativity, because AI is getting more and more sophisticated.
Balaji's worries about AI taking over creative jobs, those are already happening in journalism, music, graphic design. As AI gets better at making human-like content, we have to think about the impact on people who depend on those jobs. Economically, socially.
It's not just about individuals, though. It's about protecting our culture. If AI becomes the main source of creative content, we might lose all the things that make human art valuable. The perspectives, the emotions, the human experience.
So how do we deal with this? How do we use AI's power, but also protect the things that are important to creativity?
It has to be a group effort. Artists, technologists, policymakers, the public. We have to work together to figure out how to use AI ethically in creative fields. We need new models for ownership, for giving credit, for paying people fairly. Models that value both human and machine creativity.
Balaji's story reminds us that progress shouldn't come at the cost of human well-being, or the things that make us human. We have to be aware of the potential downsides of AI and work together to make sure this technology makes our lives better, not worse. We're entering this new era, right, where the lines between human creativity and machine creativity, they're getting blurrier. So how do we even prepare for a future where AI might be making, most of the content we see?
I think the first step is we need to understand AI better, how it works, and what it can't do. AI can do a pretty amazing job of copying human creativity, but it doesn't have those real human experiences, the emotions, the critical thinking, the things that make art meaningful.
Balaji actually talked about that. He said that AI is great at patterns, at copying things, but it struggles with, being original, coming up with new ideas, and understanding those subtle things about human expression.
Exactly. AI right now, it's a tool, a really powerful tool. It can help us be more creative, but it can't replace us completely. We should think of AI as a partner in the creative process, not a replacement.
That makes me think about Like, how do we educate the next generation of artists and writers and musicians, so they can thrive in this world where AI is making content so fast? What skills are going to be important when AI can just generate stuff at that scale?
We need to focus on the skills that AI can't copy. Things like critical thinking, emotional intelligence, being able to solve complex problems, and connecting with people on a human level.
So basically, we need to focus on what makes human creativity unique, what makes us different from machines. It's about using AI to help us be more creative, but without losing that human element, that essence.
Right. It's about realizing that AI is a tool. And like any tool, it can be used for good or for bad. Just like, a hammer can build a house or it can hurt someone. AI can help us be more creative or it can hurt creativity. The choices we make now, they'll determine what happens with AI and how it affects society.
Balaji's story is tragic, but it's also a powerful message. It tells us that we have to talk about these things, about AI, about ethics, about the future of creativity. We can't just sit back and watch as technology changes everything. We need to be involved in shaping the future we want.
I agree. We have to demand more from tech companies, more transparency, more accountability. We have to learn about AI ourselves and help others learn about it,
Like,
the good and the bad. And most importantly, we have to work together to make sure that AI is developed and used in a way that's good for everyone. That's in line with our values as humans.
Balaji's story reminds us that progress shouldn't hurt people, or compromise our ethics, or the things that make us human. We have to honor his memory by having these conversations, by demanding better from the tech industry, and by working towards a future where AI is a force for good, where it helps humanity, not the other way around.
Well said. It's been a difficult discussion, but an important one. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for your insights. And to our listeners, keep thinking about these complex issues. Join the conversation about the future of AI. What kind of world do we want to build with this technology? What role do we want AI to play in our lives, in our work, and how we create things? These are the questions we all have to consider as we move into this unknown territory. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.